Okay, so today we're going deep on Lex Fridman.
Lex Fridman, yeah.
And I think a lot of people know him from his podcast.
Yeah, definitely. His podcast, I mean, he's also a researcher at MIT, right?
Yeah, he is.
Like doing actual AI research, which I
He's
think,
crazy.
yeah, it is.
Like the guy is, I mean,
He's living it.
he's living in the future.
Yeah.
But I really think that his podcast is probably what most people know him for.
For sure, for sure.
I mean, and it's interesting because he's had like everybody on the podcast.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, you name it, they've been on there.
Yeah, like Elon Musk.
Elon Musk has been on there a few times.
Multiple times, yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg,
Yeah.
Kanye West.
Titania, yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable who he's had on the show.
Yeah, I mean, even like, outside of the tech world, he's had like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
And then, you get into like some actual philosophers and thinkers like, Chomsky.
Yuval Noah Harari.
He's had such a range.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
So I think for this deep dive, what we want to do is we want to kind of like get into like what are some of the like main themes of the Lex Fridman podcast?
What are the threads that kind of run through all these conversations? Because it's kind of all over the place, right?
It is all over the place. But, I think that one of the things that he keeps coming back to, and I think it's really interesting, is this idea of human nature.
Human nature, for sure.
So what does he even mean by that?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like this really big question, and I think he explores it from a lot of different angles.
Right.
Like, he's got all these people from all these different backgrounds on the show, and he's always kind of probing them about, what makes us tick, what makes us human.
Yeah, like what are the things that make us different from machines?
Yeah, exactly, and how will we be different from machines in the future, right?
Right, and I think that, like, that's one of the things that is so interesting about his podcast is he's not afraid to, like, ask those really big questions.
No, not at all.
Like the meaning of life, consciousness, free will.
And he's coming at it from like both the scientific side with his AI background, but then also this like human side where he's talking to all these different people who've thought about these things a lot.
Right. So it's like a really cool intersection of science and philosophy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like almost a new kind of philosophy, right? It's like philosophy informed by the latest technology.
Yeah, and I think it's really important too because like we are living in this world where technology is changing so rapidly.
Oh, rapidly.
And I think that it's really valuable to have somebody like Lex Fridman who is, not only thinking about these things, but also like having these conversations with the people who are at the forefront of these changes.
Yeah. And, I think he's like uniquely positioned to do it, right?
Totally.
Because he's got the technical chops to really understand like the nuts and bolts of how AI works, how these algorithms are being built.
Yeah.
But then he's also got this like real intellectual curiosity about the bigger picture. Like, what does this all mean for humanity?
Right.
And I think that's what makes his podcast so compelling.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that he's not just talking about the technology itself, but he's talking about the impact it's having on us.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, you brought up earlier about how he's got all these different guests from all these different walks of life. And I think that's really important because it gives you this like really well-rounded perspective.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just like the tech people talking about tech.
Exactly.
It's like, philosophers, historians, artists, all these different people.
And they all have something to contribute to this conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
About how technology is shaping our world.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes his podcast so valuable is it's not just like a one-sided conversation,
No, it's very much a dialogue.
Yeah.
And he's really good at like facilitating that dialogue, I think.
Yeah, and I think that he does a really good job of like, he's not afraid to push back on his guests.
No, he'll challenge them.
Yeah, he'll challenge them, but he does it in a way that's like respectful.
Yes, it's not confrontational.
Yeah.
It's more like he's genuinely trying to understand their perspective and, maybe even help them see things from a different angle.
Right. So, I mean, I think we could talk about Lex Fridman all day.
We could. There's so much there.
But I think that, if you're interested in any of these topics that we've been talking about, like AI, the future of technology, space exploration,
human nature, consciousness, like any of those things. I really recommend checking out his podcast. I second that.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you just like dip your toe in and listen to 1 or 2 episodes, I think you'll get a lot out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And, who knows? Maybe it'll even inspire you to come up with your own question for Lex.
That's a great point.
You know?
Yeah, like what would you ask him?
What would you ask him? You know?
It's a good question to ponder.
It is.
It is.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it for today.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of Lex Fridman.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.